Good morning, everybody. I want to come and provide an update on our request to the council for several amendments to my 2018 budget request. So with this budget, I think you know I'm advancing my commitment to develop inclusive prosperity across our city, investing in workers and investing in families. And to better meet the needs of our city, I'm asking the council to consider a few adjustments. Let me start in the area of education. So we are very proud with this budget to be making the single largest investment in public education in the history of our city, over $1.5 billion, representing an increase of 7.1% over last year's budget. It means that every student across our city in both sectors will have the resources that they need. Today, we are amending our budget request in the form of an errata letter that we send every year. And included in our errata letter is a $3.86 million increase to the DC public school system and a $3.28 million increase to the DC public charter school system. These increases would effectively get DCPS and the DC public charter schools to a budget that reflects a 2% increase over last year's per student funding formula. Let me also move to the area of public safety. I think you know in our budget, we included a new program called the Returning Citizens Portal Reentry Program. And in the errata letter, we clearly outline what this new Returning Citizens Portal will do, the staff it needs to do it, and the agencies that we will be working with the Department of Corrections to do it. The $2.3 million enhancement will continue to show up in the Department of Corrections budget, but let me just say a little bit more about how those funds will be used. $1.1 million will provide case management services, transportation to the portal of entry facility, and the continuum of care. $500,000 will be assigned to SNAP employment benefits and training. $350,000 will cover mental health assessments and services. Over $270,000 will be spent on renovations for the facility itself, the portal of entry at DLC. $65,000 will be devoted to the workforce development assistance, $50,000 to driver's license and identification services. I also want to highlight our investment as our commitment to the NEAR Act legislation in the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. We also wanted to clearly delineate the staff that would be assigned to particular activities in this area. They include the Community Stabilization Program, the Safer, Stronger DC program, and portions of our Roving Leaders program. Next, I wanted to say a bit about homelessness. We are very proud to report that we have made a dramatic improvement in ending family homelessness and overall homelessness in the District of Columbia in the last year. 2 years ago, we made the bold promise to end homelessness in Washington. And because of our Homeward DC program, our strategic plan, and a consistent funding and very focused leadership, we are beginning to fulfill that promise. With the council's support, we are investing more in affordable housing than any other jurisdiction like ours in the country. We launched a new homeless services prevention program, and we increased our investments to permanent housing housing programs like rapid rehousing, targeted affordable housing, and we've increased those efforts by nearly 60%. We have also developed interim eligibility, which provides immediate shelter for families in urgent need. We help more than 2,700 families avoid homelessness using our system, and we connected more than 1,800 veterans to permanent housing. And through a 3-year, $9 million grant awarded to the Department of Behavioral Health, we expanded our outreach to chronically homeless individuals and people with substance use and mental illness disorders. And we have a very forward-looking plan for DC General. Overall, the number of persons experiencing homelessness in the District of Columbia decreased by 10.5% from the 2016 point-in-time count. The decrease in 2016 is largely attributed to a 21.8% reduction in the number of families experiencing homelessness in the point-in-time count. The number of unaccompanied individuals as well is down 2.7% from 2016 and down 6.2% overall in the last 2 years. There are, of course, other changes, probably about a dozen changes, some technical in nature, that are included in the errata letter. One additional that I'll add is that the council gave us authority to use eminent domain on a facility on W Street in Ward 5, and we have tightened up that language and directed its use toward fleet maintenance, and that is also included in the errata that we're asking the council support for. So we're happy to answer your questions. Yes.
I have a question unrelated to the budget.
Okay.
Councilmember David Grasso said yesterday that the Inspector General told him that 2 of your appointees in your administration had received preferential treatment in school placements from Kaya Henderson. Do you know who they are?
I know, and I can't talk about the report, and I don't know who else is talking about the report, but our direction from the Inspector General was to keep the report confidential. I can tell you that we are aware that, as you have reported, that one of our cabinet members asked for a discretionary placement and received it. We are aware in the report, and again, I can't talk about the particulars of the report, but we don't know of another cabinet member that was involved.
You don't know of another cabinet member that was involved?
No.
Okay. Was the person standing to your right, Rashad Young, the city administrator, did he receive discretionary placement from Kaya Henderson? I could ask him that directly as well.
Well, I can tell you that Rashad Young's children participated in the lottery. They were matched in the lottery, and his children attended a school where they were matched.
Okay.
Mayor, yesterday I asked you if you had spoken to the deputy mayor about this, Deputy Mayor Snowden, and you said, I assume she did the right thing by contacting the chancellor. Did you have a conversation with her at all about this when you first found out? And can you tell me when you first found out about this?
I won't be able to tell you exactly when, but I have a regular meeting with the Inspector General. It's usually once a quarter, where he updates me. He asks me if there's anything that I like him to look into, and he'll give me an update on the things that he's working on. And in one of our recent meetings, he gave me an update and told me that he was investigating the former chancellor in her discretionary placements, and that he would be forwarding his report to the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. He was also very specific in saying, I believe that he said that there was a cabinet member involved, or government officials involved, and private citizens involved, but they weren't the subject of his investigation. And he was careful to say that because they weren't the subject of his investigation and suspected of any wrongdoing, their names would not be released. I think he was also very focused on the fact that children were involved in the release of those names.
So you don't believe there was any wrongdoing?
What I believe is I have the Inspector General's report, and he is concerned that the Chancellor's decision-making was partial, and that was his finding. I do know this, Matt, that the Chancellor has the legal authority to make, in exceptional cases, discretionary placements. Everybody in the government has the obligation to follow the rules. And I do think that the deputy mayor did what was available to her, and the chancellor made the decision. The chancellor is the educator in this equation, and in the best position to make that decision.
Just to follow up on this, I think
Yep.
the message from your press office we've gotten is that there was a fault that it was with the chancellor for in how she made these discretionary placements. The fault wasn't with people who
Well, I
asked
think that
her to make those.
I think there's some fault in the process, and this is what we're very focused on. And to be more clear about my response to Matt, is we want the chancellor to be in the best position to have parameters to make those decisions. Because anytime there's a discretionary decision, there will be questions about it. So we think it's important to have some parameters there so that it's very clear how the chancellor makes decisions. And that is what we communicated to Chancellor Wilson.
But these are people who had special access to the chancellor because they're in your administration. They work, closely with her. And within this, what assurances do people have, or should they have, that, just by proximity, people aren't getting special treatment?
Well, I think they should know that I expect, what my expectations are for members that I appoint and for people who work in the government is that they follow the rules and they act with integrity. And it's my responsibility to make sure all the processes are in place to have adequate checks on that. And quite frankly, that's what we're looking at.
So do you anticipate, do you think that the deputy mayor did something wrong by asking for this place?
Well, I know what the IG has found, what the IG suggests.
It's what you decide. Is this the ethics of...
Let me finish. There is an Inspector General's report, and the Inspector General found that people who sought, both inside the government and outside the government, who sought a discretionary placement, were not found to have done anything wrong. Yes, Martin.
But just following up on this line of questioning, I think the issue is that, and Deputy Mayor Snowden in her statement said she took advantage of an opportunity that's available to any DC resident. But I guarantee most DC residents probably A, don't know this is available, and B, don't know that they can email the chancellor or call her. So do you have a sense that there could be, at least the optics look like, proximity granted someone an opportunity?
Yes, I think that is exactly what it could look like. Although I will tell you that residents of the District of Columbia who don't work for the government have done exactly that. Some have been awarded, some have been denied. People in the government, according to the Inspector General, have asked for it. Some were granted, some were denied. So I think what's important is what the process is and what the parameters are. And it is certainly, and back to Aaron's point, my expectation that all members of my cabinet and below that, not just the cabinet, I appoint them, but everybody below the cabinet level too, are operating with integrity.
One more from me. I heard that you said you had a conversation with the current chancellor about this. Did you tell him any guidelines that you would like to see?
Yes. So I had referred this matter to my general counsel, who is actually my direct contact with the Inspector General. Asked her to develop some ideas that would be sufficient guidelines, and I think that the general counsel and the deputy mayor from education had that discussion with Chancellor Wilson.
So you still don't know who the second appointee in your administration is who received preferential treatment from Kai Henderson?
I'm not sure if you have reviewed the Inspector General's report.
I haven't seen the report, no.
Okay, because I'm not sure what that second person who was referring to. I have a guess, and I do believe that it was referring to the city administrator, but the facts don't match with what we know. So if that person that they're referring to, I just don't think the facts match.
Is there a reason you didn't ask the Inspector General who the people are?
The Inspector General, when he does an investigation, almost never tells me that he's doing an investigation until the investigation has concluded. And in this case, he has identified to me, just like he has to everybody else, who he thinks the wrong party is. And he would not divulge the other parties.
I guess from the public standpoint here, we're struggling because, the responsibility is the Inspector General. He did this investigation. He gave it to you. It seems that now the responsibility is yours to decide what disciplinary action should.
I have decided that.
But if you're not going to find out who the last person is, we're just going to keep asking.
I didn't say I wasn't going to find out. I can tell you that who we believe that he was referring to, even earlier when we were made aware of the report, we tried to correct any information, and hopefully that information will be corrected.
Who do you believe he's referring to?
I just told you.
The city administrator?
Yes.
Okay, but he did not receive discretionary placement.
I told you that his children participated in the lottery. They were matched, and that's the school that they attend.
So that means they did not receive a discretionary placement from the chancellor?
I'm not going to repeat myself. What's the next question? Yes, yes, there's a question behind you.
Just a basic question here on process. I mean, I called DCPS and asked them for a set of numbers as to how many times the discretion was used, what the result of the discretion is, that sort of stuff. Not names, not schools, just
Okay.
a round number. And they said either they're not providing it or they just don't have it. Do you think that DCPS should make those numbers available? Do you think they should make them available to another city agency so that there can be some kind of back and forth and some checks and balances to make sure that you're not?
Sure, I'm happy to check that, Martin. I know that the report refers to a period of time. I don't remember the numbers off the top, but there are a couple handfuls of cases in that period of time. Yes, sir.
Just to be clear, so you're saying the IG says that it's Rashad Young's is the second cabinet?
No, I didn't say that.
Can you clear that up?
Actually, it's unfortunate that it appears that the report was shared when we were specifically asked not to share the report. So there are things about the report that I cannot say, but this is my read on the report. And this is what we believe. We believe that there is an error talking about a second cabinet official, that the IG believes that a second cabinet official was given a discretionary appointment. What we know is that there was a lottery participation for the children and they were matched. So that's just something that we have to work out. We gave a call, and it's not for the first time. I think for the second time we let the IG know that we think there's a mistake.
So where's that information coming from that there's a second person in it? It's the city administrator.
It's in the report.
The city administrator is identified in the report?
Peter, you know he's not.
Okay. Well, no, I mean by job title, but not by name.
He's not.
So how do you know it's him? That's the part that I don't understand.
In reading all of these things, we're trying to piece information together about who we think something is.
Is the Inspector General not willing to just tell you who they are?
I don't.
Let's ask him.
Yeah, okay. We're going to go back, as I mentioned, we told him that we think that there is incorrect information about the second individual. We told him that, and we'll tell him again.
Like 5 minutes ago, you said you didn't think there was a second person, and then later now we're talking about that you sent information to the Inspector General because you think that they're talking about the city administrator.
I think we're saying the same thing, so I don't want you to suggest that I've said something different. I said we don't believe that a second person in the cabinet received a discretionary placement.
Okay, so there's a briefing that you had with the Inspector General a couple months ago. And at that meeting, when you were having that meeting, did you think that he was referring to the city administrator in that meeting?
That meeting didn't go into details about who was, I didn't have a report, it didn't go into details.
So at some point after that meeting, you or someone in your staff believes that the report is referring to the city administrator?
Yes.
And then you or someone in your administration forwards information to the Inspector General saying, we don't think it's, and if you think it's the city administrator, we don't think it's the
Yes.
And you haven't heard anything back from the Inspector General?
We saw the report.
So this was before the report was circulated?
Was before it was circulated or after it was circulated? It was after it was circulated.
What reason did you have to think the city administrator was the second individual identified?
Some lines in the report gave us that belief.
Can you talk at all about what the lines were?
I think I can't talk about the report in specifics.
Okay. So generally, you think there's some misinformation in the Inspector General?
We think there may be an error, yes.
So is that playing into the fact that you don't seem to think that whatever was discussed in the report about the way people asked for placements by the chancellor?
Aaron, this is what the key takeaway I think should be on this issue. I don't want there to be any question about discretionary placements in our administration. And I recognize, though, that the chancellor needs to have that ability, because in a school system that has over 45,000 kids, the chancellor is going to need to have the ability at some points to make a discretionary placement. We want it to be very clear in a set of parameters how the chancellor should address those discretionary placements. And that's really the most I can say about it. I don't think that we have a tight enough process for anybody, for people who work for the government or who don't work for the government. And we're going to fix that. Is there another question?
Mayor,
Yes. Yes,
I
Tom.
came in late, I apologize. Did you say or did you not say whether or not you think Kaya Henderson made any mistakes?
I think what I just told Aaron is we need a tighter process for Chancellor Wilson and for the next chancellor. What I believe is that the chancellor needs some discretionary authority, but I want to make it very clear for anybody who works in the government or works outside of the government what the parameters are that the chancellor will refer to when making those decisions. And we've communicated that to Chancellor Wilson.
Tom, you have the last question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Last question, Mark.
Why is
Well, okay, at the subject at hand, the increase in per pupil funding.
Yes.
Where is the money coming from? Is it one-time money? Is it recurring money?
Yes, good question. So,
And just one last
Yep.
question. You know, what do you say to the advocates who say, listen, obviously 0.5%, this is only 2%, this is the so what we can get to?
yeah, so we firmly believe that our budget request reflects what schools need. There is a strong sense out there that the additional 0.5% will actually get them closer to getting not only over the cost of living, but a little bit more. So that's what we're working on. This is a one-time infusion, but we know that we are able to work that one-time infusion into our next budget cycle. So it actually represents a 0.5 increase to the per pupil formula, but because it's one time, it's basically like two, I don't want to say grants, it's two payments that would be the equivalent of getting to 2% increase. Yes, sir.
This was at Wilson High School. So the ANC in Tenleytown says that the funding set aside for Wilson isn't following the formula for DC, the Uniform per Student Funding Formula. Does this budget add more funding for Wilson? And so
This budget doesn't, it adds more funding for all of DC public schools.
today.
The amendment is not particular to a school. What the $3.8 million will get is an increase per student for all the schools.
So what do you say to parents of Wilson who say the school's not getting enough funding according to the city's own formula?
I don't think that's the case. We have to provide funding per student according to the law.
The ward's school board member says that 8 staff and 2 counselors will be cut at Wilson, and that follows a larger trend. I think she says 20 staff have been let go in the last 3 years at Wilson.
May I get you some more information specific to Wilson's budget? I just don't know it off the top.
Mayor, can you talk about the removal of the animal control issues and why? Just to start with, why were these policy changes put into the budget? Why not one as a separate bill?
I think the city administrator wants to answer that question.
I sure do. So when we move the BSA and move the budget, it is an opportunity for us to look at what kinds of things we need to get done and accomplish throughout the year and the best vehicle to do it. So we placed the provision in the BSA, and we've done that in similar years to put other kinds of changes or bills in the Budget Support Act. We removed it because, in fact, we heard a lot of conversation and consternation, frankly, from the community about it. And so we decided to take it out and move it through, if we come back to it, move it through the regular legislative process where we have more opportunity to discuss this issue and what we were trying to accomplish. What we were trying to accomplish is to make sure that health and safety is protected in the community and have some guidelines about how we would deal with chickens in particular and the safety issues and the health issues that they present.
Why did this bubble up as a issue this year? Why in this budget?
Well, things bubble up all the time that we take a look at. The health director has been looking at this issue for some time, and she was ready to make a series of changes to the provisions and laws that govern animal control. And so the timing just fits with what we were the timing fits with what we were doing with the budget.
This wasn't a war on pets.
This is not a war on pets, no.
Mr. Young, did you make the decision to drop this? Because, I mean, there were a lot of people who testified at a hearing at the council.
I mean, it was a collective decision. We all look at the hearing process, the mayor, myself, the agency directors, and so we all got to the same point around the same time that we all agreed that we ought to take this provision out.
And what's out now? Tell us what.
The entire section that dealt with changes to regulations of animals. So there was a cat licensing issue, there was a chicken issue, I think there was a ferret issue that Tom asked me about ad nauseum. So that entire section we removed.
So people can keep chickens, cats don't have to have licenses.
Well, now let's be clear about let's be clear about chickens. We have lifted the provision that further restricts the use of chickens, but having chickens in one's backyard is not the best idea. And so there is a real health and safety issue there. And so we'll have to talk about how we're going to revisit this issue.
But it's legal at the moment.
I think what we did with this provision was clarifying it, because there's some gray areas around chicken regulation. We're talking about chickens. You had some gray areas around chicken regulation. So the idea was never that we're against animals. We love animals, maybe not penguins. We ban them? No, too soon? Okay. But I think that you asked, why did we come to this decision? And sometimes we include things, and all mayors have included things that have some relation to the budget, but maybe we decided that this would be better to discuss in a standalone matter, and before we bring it back, we'll have some community discussion.
But you do plan to ban chickens in backyards?
We're going to have some community discussion and move forward with what we think is best for the city.
May I ask about ferrets?
I don't know anything about ferrets, but we can discuss it at another point. Yes.
Mayor, if you take the education funding changes, the pet removal issues, a fair number of changes in this budget between when you presented it now and it's going
It's actually about the same. We've had a lot of letters that were a little bit longer, so it's actually not.
You do a lot of outreach early on in the community meetings.
We do.
Why, did you not get the sense from the community this time that schools were, that 2% was going to be as important?
No, let me be clear about something. Our budget, even before this errata letter, represents a $100 million increase in schools. So schools remains our number one priority. We were able to make a small adjustment, and we will make that adjustment in future years to try to get as close to get very close to the cost of living plus, if we can, from year to year.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.